T, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Man, all good, brother. What's going on today?
Everything's good. Everything's good. I'm excited about this guest on today because this is a special edition. We're of course kicking off the MS Awareness Month, and again thanking you and Phil and the Rev and Bruce for allowing this to happen for this month again. So we're back here again. Um, so what we're going to do is get Dr. Lindsey in, and he's going to and Dr. Lindsey is my personal neurologist for almost 20 years. So we're going to find out a little more about him and also be able to go in the process of just learn more about MS from a clinician standpoint and also interact with him and ask him questions about real life stuff.
Right.
So I'm going to get Dr. Lindsey in right now so I don't waste any more time. So he's going to come in and just enlighten us about MS. So here we go. Dr. Lindsey.
Good afternoon. How you doing?
Doing well. Good afternoon to you too. So where are you now?
Right now, I'm in my office at the University of Texas Medical School.
Okay.
I've got a gigantic whiteboard in the background, so if I have fantastic ideas, I write them down immediately.
Awesome. That'll work. And I know they're fantastic.
Yeah.
And we're not going to. I'm gonna cut through the chase. So, in learning more about Dr. Lindsey, because you're a very interesting person to me. Like I said before, I've been knowing you almost 20 years, and I realize I know nothing about you. I know you, but I don't know you. And I'm not trying to dig in too deep. But one thing to I like basic stuff like where are you from? Where were you born and raised?
Grew up mostly in Waco, Texas.
Wow.
Which is kind of in the middle of the state here.
Yep.
I was actually born in Fort Hood while my father was in the Army. And then I went to Rice University for college.
Okay. Yeah, and digging into your background also, you have a website that's out there to where it was something you mentioned, Rice University, to where you graduated with summa cum laude honors, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so to tell you the truth, my honors in graduating was thank you, Lordy.
Yeah.
So I gotta commend you for that one. And you've gone, and after that you progressed, and you moved to Houston after that, correct? Or what happened?
Well, first I went to medical school on the East Coast. Went to Harvard, so I was in Boston for 5 years, and then I did my residency at Stanford. So I was on the West Coast for another 5 years, and then it was finally time to get a job, and I came back to Houston and joined the faculty here in 1993.
Okay. So you've been there for a few minutes, if anything, to say the least.
Oh yeah.
So that's awesome. You've had that experience. So Harvard, Stanford. I think I saw some Oxford in there somewhere also, right?
Yeah, I did a year of research there and got a master's degree.
Went across the big pond. Okay.
Yeah.
That'll work. How was that experience?
That was interesting. I mean, it's same language, but very different culture. And it was really a lot of fun. I enjoyed that year. Rains quite a bit in England, and it's a lot colder there than it is in Texas.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe so. My one of my big questions I want to ask then. So you were doing your, of course, residency, fellowship, and everything. What had you gravitate to MS? What was your connection for MS?
It seemed like a more interesting area to be involved in. So there's. I knew that I wanted to be in research. I knew that I wanted to be in academics and work on developing new things and new treatments and new ideas about diseases. And MS seemed like one of the more interesting diseases, and also one of the ones that was more likely to be approachable scientifically. That there were stuff seemed like stuff was about to happen in MS, and it seemed like an exciting place to be.
Okay. Did you know much about it before, say, for instance, going to medical school? MS?
No, I never. Well, let's see. One of my mother's friends when I was growing up had MS, and she was actually fairly severely affected. So that was all that I knew about it.
Okay. So the awareness is out there, still need to be had, and people knowing about MS. And now you're the professor of neurology for the clinic track, University of Texas, Houston Medical Center School. So hence the whiteboards behind you.
Whiteboards, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So that allows for that also. And I'm reading here also Director of Division of Multiple Sclerosis and Numerology, University of Texas, Houston Medical Board, and also Director of Multiple Sclerosis Fellowships.
Mm-hmm.
So you're the guy giving all the ideas for everybody coming in, or direction for the ideas.
Well, more. I mean, people have their own ideas, and it's. I think the as leader of the division, it's not just about me. It's about everybody in the division being successful. So you try to help them develop their ideas and to move forward with them. And everybody's got their own area of interest. Some people are mainly interested in taking care of patients in clinic, and then others are one person is interested in some of the MS related diseases, and another guy in the division is interested in using new MRI techniques to learn more things about MS.
Okay, makes sense. So T, and me saying that I've been knowing Dr. Lindsey for like 20 years, and he inherited me from another physician. The other physician sent me to him. I think I had an exacerbation. I don't remember which one it was then. Dr. Lindsey. He inherited me. So in knowing you inherit people quite often, because you're still in clinic and seeing patients, and you're doing a great job. Of course, for me, I'm thinking. And what are some of the challenges you see whenever you inherit patients from other physicians, or even for the first time? What are some of the larger challenges you may see?
Well, kind of the first thing that I try to do with everybody that I see for the first time is to make sure we have the right diagnosis. With multiple sclerosis, you can blame just about any kind of neurologic symptom on MS and say, well, that's just your MS. So it's important to at least once, sit down and think carefully, is just looking and acting like MS, or is something else? And MS is, of the diseases I see, MS is one of the more common. So almost always it is MS, but that's an important first step.
Okay.
Then you want to get people. So once you've decided that they do have multiple sclerosis, you want to figure out what the right treatment for them is. And that has changed immensely over the time I've been in the field. I started out in 1993, and we had just the first available treatment, which was the beta seron, and then after that we had interferons. And in the last 10 years, there's been a bunch of new treatments and a lot of different options, and the progress still continues.
Yeah. Okay. Do you think, you mentioned about diagnosing patients? Do you think that's getting better? Because what I've seen in the past, of course, I've had MS 20-some years. A lot of people who have been diagnosed or affected by MS, they were late in having the diagnosis of, hey, this is MS. This is where we're going to treat this process. Is there a sense of urgency in the neurology field to try to make sure those patients are diagnosed sooner, or not necessarily for MS, but for any diagnosis for any neurological disease?
I think there did not used to be. Whoops, now we're getting some feedback. There didn't used to be a lot of urgency because we didn't have many treatments, and the ones we had weren't all that great. I think now there's more urgency for two reasons. One is that we do have really effective treatments that make a difference if you start them early. And the second is that the disease seems to be most active when it first starts out, and you're going to have more of an impact on disability if you get in with treatment early than you are if you get in with treatment after 5 or 10 years of symptoms.
Okay. Even in you saying the different treatments that are out there now, I think there's like 17 approved medications for MS, which of course they have different side effects and possibilities and whatnot. And you now knowing you have this from when you started to now, how does it feel to have more options for those patients? Or do you think it's still pretty limited, just a certain type of patient type you have to go with?
It's really great actually to have all those choices. And for relapsing MS, those medicines are very effective. One of the big unmet needs in the MS world is for progressive MS. So people that go into either start with progressive MS or go into progressive phase, that's something where our treatments now just barely work. So we really need something more effective there.
Okay. Yeah, that's and I've heard that to where I think there's 1 or 2 medications that may be affected now, that's out there in the market, which is getting better, hopefully. And that's one reason why we have you on here to increase awareness, to where, of course, awareness may bring money for funding, such as research and everything that may be on your table now, because since the position you're in now. So research, you have a ton of studies. Have you seen how effective, like, say, for instance, from beginning to the end, you've seen some studies go from beginning all the way to the end to a product that's out on the market? And I'm not sure if you had a product that has come out from your study, but if you have, or if you've seen the progress of it, how proud were you in seeing that, hey, I saw this start and I see where it's finishing and helping these patients? How important is that to you?
Yeah, no, that's always great to see stuff you've worked on actually come into common use and make a difference for people. We're just we do a lot of studies, but we are just a little tiny part of getting a phase 3 trial through the last phases of clinical testing. Typically in the last phase of clinical testing, there'll be a few hundred different centers around the world. It's usually North America and Europe, and then maybe South America and other countries as well. So it's an enormous effort, and costs a lot of money, and we're just a small part of that. But still, it's good to know that we contributed to bringing new treatments online.
Absolutely. MS is worldwide, right?
Yeah.
Yes, it is. It's more kind of North America and Europe are the high prevalence areas, but it's found all over the world.
Yeah, and I don't TJ may want to jump in and have a question to ask, but I want to ask this other question to where how is it quite often new medications, in particular for MS, maybe for other disease also, the medication that is now approved for MS was actually intended for something else, and then all of a sudden, hey, this is great on MS patients, so let's go ahead and put that through trial, and it comes through and it's approved for that. How does that process work to where, okay, we're going to use this for just random lupus, and it's not necessarily as productive there, but of course, for the MS patients, we may see a little niche. So how does it even just cross the line for that?
A lot of that's driven by the pharmaceutical companies and their intellectual property, what they have patents on, and what their interest is at the moment. And there's kind of 2 areas where you get that. One is you have something that works in one autoimmune disease and you want to look at other autoimmune diseases. So if it works in MS, does it also work in rheumatoid arthritis and lupus and myasthenia gravis and on and on. And then you have another thing people have been doing, is doing these big screens. So they'll get some kind of laboratory test that they think prevents or predicts the effectiveness of a drug for MS, and they'll screen thousands of drugs that are already approved for human use, and find out do any of those have the effect you're looking for, and if so, do any of those work in the disease you're interested in.
Okay, that makes sense. It just make it more broad and see, hey, what sticks onto the wall.
Right.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. T, I know you said you had some questions earlier.
Yeah, so Dr. Lindsey, just to kind of reiterate what Micah stated earlier, it's an honor and a pleasure to have you here with us today on the podcast. Dr. J Willam. So when you came over to the Houston Medical School, University of Texas, Houston Medical School, you worked a part of the multiple sclerosis group led by him. When you hear the name Dr. J Willam, what does that mean to you, and then how has he impacted your career?
So he was my mentor for the first 20 years or so while I was here. He was really very much a leader in using MRI scans in clinical trials. And that's, you have your MRI scan that you're using in the clinic, to decide what to do for somebody, and you look at the pictures and make up your mind what needs to happen next. But there wasn't a way to quantify, how bad was the MS on this MRI scan, how much lesion volume was there, et cetera. And Jerry was one of the kind of pioneers in doing automatic quantitation on MRI scans so that you could use that as a measure of how much your drug worked. So that's one of the areas where he had a big impact. Another area is that he later in his career, he got very involved with the, at very high levels in the clinical trials, and basically was kind of on the central steering committee for all these billion-dollar clinical trials, deciding, what the study was going to look like and how it was going to be done.
And I was also wondering, I noticed, I read up on, there's an annual meeting of the European Committee for Treatment and Research in MS. What specifically is that, and what impact does that have on the world of multiple sclerosis?
So ECTRIMS, as we usually call it, started as a small group of Europeans. I think it was probably in the 90s or late 80s. So it was kind of the few European neurologists that were working on multiple sclerosis at that time formed the society, or the committee, I guess they call themselves. And they started having an annual meeting, which has grown immensely over the years. They started off with 100 people or so, and the last meeting was around 15,000 people. And it's attracted, it's not just Europeans, it's most of the American MS people go to that meeting, and all the Middle Eastern and South American, a lot of people from those areas go as well. So that's kind of become, even though it started as a regional meeting, it's become one of the major forums for presenting exciting new MS results.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Nice.
So go ahead, TJ. Think you were saying
No, I was just saying that I was kind of just echoing your sentiment that's really awesome to see the growth, especially 15,000 in attendance. And was this when was that most recent meeting last year, or?
It's always in the fall of the year, and they pick a different city in Europe each year to have it. The last two, of course, have been virtual.
Yeah.
I'm very sad about that because it was supposed to be in Vienna, and I've never been there. I would have loved to go to Vienna, but maybe some other time.
Yeah. Gotta get you back over there. Dr. Lindsey, this is a question that I want to ask as a pioneer, not pioneer, but somebody who's an advocate for MS. I get asked the question all the time, what is MS? And I explain it in my terms. So could you explain, just from a clinical standpoint, of course, stuff we can understand, how would you explain MS to somebody who's actually just first coming to your office just diagnosed? How would you explain it to them?
I would tell them that it's an autoimmune disease where your own immune system is attacking your own body instead of fighting infections like it's supposed to. So it's an autoimmune disease, and it specifically damages the brain and spinal cord, and mostly it damages the myelin, which is like the insulation on the nerve cells, is the main target of attack.
Okay. In this is something real far out there. I don't know if you had this before. Have you had a patient that was diagnosed with MS, and then they come back months later, and then there's no sign of disease?
There's definitely people who will have a typical attack that looks and acts like MS, and then they don't have much else for the rest of their life. That certainly happens.
Okay.
And usually after the first few attacks, people recover back to normal. So there's not any clinical signs that they ever had any problems.
Do in recovering or having the relapse and readmitting, and I guess diagnosing and putting them in that bucket, or any MS patient, to where when they have a disability come about, to where I back to history for me, like I've had, if not complete partial paralysis on my right side. how optimistic can you tell a patient who's going through that it's possible that it will come back when they have the relapse of readmitting, or it's like, hey, let's just walk the course, take the medications, and then we'll see what happens after that?
You really have to kind of wait and see. And MS, some people will have inflammation that doesn't damage the nerve fibers, and they, the inflammation goes away and they recover pretty quickly. Some people will have inflammation that damages the myelin, and the myelin can grow back and they can recover. It takes a little longer. Okay. And then some people will have inflammation that damages nerve cells, and nerve cells are not very good at growing back and reconnecting. So that can often lead to permanent disability.
Okay. So it depends. It's truly a snowflake disease. It depends on the person.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. It's very individual how people are affected.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I've seen different people, and it's all over the board. Well, no different people. It's all over the board. How this is kind of toward the end of where we're going, but it's going to lead down another rabbit hole to where, how close do you think we are to a cure for MS, if you can say?
Oh gosh, that's really hard to predict. Yeah. I'm, the stuff that I'm working on now, I think could tell us a couple of different things that I'm excited about. One is it can tell us what the mechanism for damage is. What are the immune cells or the white blood cells doing that's actually causing damage in the brain and spinal cord, and that could lead to more effective treatments if you can, if it's interleukin 32, if you can block interleukin 32, that might be very effective. That's just an example. The other thing that I think the work I'm doing now can lead us to is what the actual target for the immune damage is. So right now, we don't know what the target is, and probably it's going to be different targets in different people. But for for myasthenia gravis, which is another autoimmune disease, we know the exact molecule that affects. And for neuromyelitis optica, which is very similar to MS in many ways, we know the exact molecule that's being affected, and we've got a diagnostic test that measures antibodies for that molecule. And in MS, we know it's something in the brain, but we don't know, which protein it might be, or even if it is a protein that's the target.
Yeah, that'll work. And you speaking of proteins, so that's a big portion of being diagnosed, correct? The proteins in your spinal fluids.
Right. Well, not just the protein. The overall protein is often pretty close to normal, but there's particular antibodies or immunoglobulins in the spinal fluid that are help diagnose multiple sclerosis. Okay.
And speaking of proteins and everything, so one thing I think they're studying that's pretty big, and speaking of curing or getting more curative for the medication, is the Epstein-Barr study that you're doing. It's been a big, not uprising, but a big media coverage for the Epstein-Barr and MS. And I know you're doing research with that from your bio. So tell me a little bit about that, and what direction that's going in, and if you can tell me, and what you all are looking at.
Yeah. So there's been two pretty high-profile papers in the last few weeks that link Epstein-Barr and MS. One of them is from the Alberto Ascirio, who's at the School of Public Health at Harvard, and that's a really interesting study. So they used the Department of Defense serum bank. So everybody that goes into the military is obviously they're healthy when they sign up, or they don't get in. And everybody gets a blood sample taken. The reason for the blood sample is to monitor for HIV infection. But once they do the HIV testing, they store the rest of the serum long term. So what they did was they went back, they looked at 15 million military service members. They found there were about 900 of those people who developed multiple sclerosis while they were in the service. And having high antibodies to Epstein-Barr virus when you first came in was very predictive of your risk of developing MS years later.
Okay.
So that was one part of that study. The other part that was even more interesting was out of those 900 people, there were actually, most of them had antibodies in their blood to Epstein-Barr virus, indicating they'd been infected with it. There were 35 who later developed MS that didn't have antibodies to Epstein-Barr virus. And out of those 35, 34 of them, they had multiple serum samples over time. And 34 of them were infected with Epstein-Barr virus from 1 to several years before they developed MS.
Mm.
And the interpretation of that was that Epstein-Barr virus infection is necessary to develop MS.
Okay. Okay.
And that's I found that was a very interesting study.
Okay. Yeah, we're making strides on how it's starting to figure that out. So I think that's huge to figure that out and to correlate those together. That's something that I can't wait to see the end of. Saying that to where, and that's we're getting close to our time. So I want to ask you just 2 questions. I don't know if TJ, you have another question?
No, keep going.
Okay.
I'm sure I can bring something off of what you're about to go.
What would you tell someone who was diagnosed with MS? This will be the last time you see them. What advice would you give them?
If it was the last time I only get to tell them one thing. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think for the majority of people, MS is now fairly treatable, and they're going to have a pretty much normal lifespan, and they should keep on doing whatever it is that they want to do. They shouldn't limit themselves at all because of the MS.
Good. And TJ, he speaks his word truly, because it's stuff that I've been doing. So he hasn't said it. Now, Michael, slow down. Wait a minute, you're doing too much. So I can appreciate that. He lets me run with life. And I think the last question is, what are you going to do with your spare time when the cure is found pretty soon?
Yeah, no, there's all sorts of, there's other diseases I can go work on.
Yeah.
or I could totally change careers now.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that was good. So, and I'm pretty sure you're in the boat also and trying to find this cure. And I'm anxious to do all I can to help find the cure also. There's more than just me who needs to be affected by this. And again,
Michael, I'm curious because he said go and find another career. So as a kid we do the whole what do you want to be when you grow up, and some kids want to be a doctor, lawyer, or in this case, Dr. Lindsey has fulfilled the doctor if that was maybe his aspirations. But what would that next career be if you decided to walk away from the medical field? What would you go into?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I think it's a little late in life to change careers now.
Or what would your hobby be? Do you have any hobbies outside of work or anything that you invest your time in?
Oh, I do a little hunting, do a little woodworking, do a little running. So there's plenty of hobbies. I would have no trouble filling up my time.
Yeah. You'll figure it out definitely.
Outdoorsman.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Dr. Lindsey, like I said, we don't want to spend up much of your time. Personally, I want to say thank you for all you've done for me and my family. Just keeping me in the right direction medically with MS and keeping me guided. So I was telling TJ before, I said we're in the office. You ask a few questions and then you're out because you're going to save the world of MS. And I like I said before, I've been seeing Dr. Lindsey for almost 20 years, but I don't know who Dr. Lindsey is. And we found out a lot today. I don't know, you from Waco, so that kind of just opens a whole different can of worms for me, which is good. But thank you once again for all that you've given to the world of MS, and we look forward to you. Your name's been on more studies, and you coming up with another plan and process for me and others like me going forward. So I really just thank you for all that you've done, and I can't. I can give you enough or owe you enough to say I can say is thank you. Really appreciate it. You're doing a lot.
Well, you're definitely very welcome. You've done very well with MS, and I can't take much of the credit for that. You've been, well, Probably you were going to have milder disease anyway, and you're on one of the effective medicines and have been taking it regularly like you're supposed to. So really, most of the credit is yours. But yeah, thanks for the appreciation.
No,
meaningful.
we're fighting together, because when I have exacerbations, something comes up, TJ, he was like, well, he's like, what, do you want to take medication? You want to take steroids, or you want to wait it out? And I know the side effects for the steroids. I said, I'm just gonna wait it out, and then it turns around. So he's absolutely right with that.
And Michael, before we go to that, I want you to promote your MS fundraiser, and then also Dr. Lindsey, just to again piggyback on what Michael was stating earlier. Want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy day. We know you're always in the clinical trials and working on new studies and different things to help with the research in multiple sclerosis. So we appreciate you being here, and then also want to thank you, because I consider, Micah is my family. So thanks for everything that you've done for him, as well as our family also.
All right. Oh, you're very welcome.
Absolutely. So I'll do this right quick, to where, of course, the MS 150 2022 is coming up the end of beginning of May, April. You can always, of course, the money, as you can see, goes to such as allowing doctors such as Dr. Lindsey and funding different research processes that are for MS. And he's a true testament on where the money is going. The mssociety.donordrive.com. You can donate there. You go to Michael Luv, and it goes to my page for the MS 150, which is coming up. So I'm in high gear training now, Dr. Lindsey, again for another bike ride. So I'm still doing what I was doing before. So I'm taking your word
good for you,
to advantage of it. So of course, everybody who's watching this, you can absolutely go donate at the mssociety.donordrive.com and find Michael Luv, and you can donate money there. And we do all types of matching and all that stuff too. So it won't go in vain where your money's going. So we really appreciate you all's help, who's donating. Appreciate Dr. Lindsey for opportunity to talk to him. This has been great for me. This has been 20 years in the making. And also TJ, Bruce, and Rev, thank you all for this time. I really appreciate everything.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right. Y'all be good. Thanks a lot.